Hey, Maddie. I'm excited to hear what we're going to talk about today.
Well, Michelle, you should be. It's a big day. It's a big day. The last few episodes, we had a good time, talked about different things, but today is a really important one because we are going over my grand strategy for college admissions. I refer to it as FLL, and I'm going to go in depth on like what it is, how I came up with it, the perks of it, and why it is, I believe, the best strategy to get into college. You ready?
I'm ready. Can't wait to find out more.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so FLL stands for fucking loves learning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Charlene, you're going to leave that in. It's the one swear I get this entire podcast. Michelle, would you like to say it too? Go ahead. Come on. I dare you.
Wow.
One swear.
Okay. FLL means fucking love learning.
There we go. We both swore on the podcast. It will be censored or referred to as FLL going forward, but that's what it means. I get one. I guess I'll start right with it is FLL is my overall strategy for college admissions. And it's interesting is I've been using it for about 3 years. Is kind of when I kind of mastered it or came up with the idea really in 2021-ish or so and gave it a cute little name. And so I've really spent the last 3 years integrating it fully. And I'm sure you've really understood, like it really is my overall thought process. It's more of an overall strategy than it is a specific tactic, if you will. But it is really it's a mindset as much as anything else. But what I had to do finally for this podcast, I sat down and I defined it. And I wrote it out. And what I came up with was the definition and then a list of what it is not and then what it tends to be. So definition, FLL is a college application strategy emphasizing intellectual vitality as well as academic enthusiasm. Specifically, it is an application with a goal above all else of imparting a genuine love of learning as well as creative and productive applications of what students learned in ways that matter to them. That level of learning then can and should naturally translate to the opportunities that they wish were taken at their future school. So that's my definition. And I guess the key aspects of that is that, yeah, like I did it. It took like an hour. I wrote it out. There it is. Two other things. What FLL is not. So these are things that I actively avoid. We'll get to. FLL is both a system of inclusion and exclusion. They're equally important. It is just as much about what I don't like to do as what I do like to do. So FLL is not haughty, intellectual, I'm doing finger quotes, braggadocious, self-aggrandizing, self-critical, childish, gross, sensationalist, controversial, argumentative, arrogant, anxious, or boring. Those are all words that, and some of them might seem obvious, but there's ones like, I would say controversial and argumentative would ironically would be probably the controversial ones of these that you're not supposed to do, but that's basically the idea. But here are the words that what it tends to be, not as always, and these vary, but these are the words, these are the concepts that come up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Warm, considerate, open-minded, diligent, perky, excited, curious, cute, quirky, intelligent, and logical. And the logical one is both the student and also kind of the application itself is logical. Like
Right.
The first like they want to pass is like I don't make students compare themselves to hot dogs. Like that's not what this is. Like it's not like the quirky one. Like don't get caught up on that. Like please don't think that this strategy is about like saying stupid shit that
Right.
makes you because that's what I'm worried people will think this is. Like oh I talk about how much I love like I'm just like a tomato. You know it's like it's always food. It's always a food
Yeah.
analogies. But it's not that. It's not that. Like there's a lot more to it than just being weird or different. But like
Mm-hmm.
that is part of the application. And that's why this really is a grandstanding overarching strategy. And why I want to kind of define it the best I can here. Because I'll be talking way more in depth about all these different aspects of it without understanding like what my real mindset is. Like a lot of stuff's gonna be confusing. Okay. So what can be helpful is how I came to this system. Like the story of how I came to this. So the year is 2021. It was my third year in this industry. And it was really my second year, like trying to get kids into Harvard. My first year, I worked at a tutoring center and like it went okay. But mostly I was a writer, so I started having to write like cool stuff, like interesting things, and that's a part of the whole system. But even at the time, I was like, I think there's more to than just being weird and interesting and like writing and being fun sounding.
Right.
That leads me to my first year, which I thought I did pretty well in the personal statements because that was just like pure like character and interest. But it was the supplements in particular. I knew they're really hard, and I just couldn't figure out like what the hell to even do. And I knew I kind of didn't do as well. And the results were good, but I was left being like, wait, I don't quite get it, especially the top level, like your Harvards or Stanfords. And that's what this strategy is really dedicated towards, is like trying to get into the top level schools. Although very conveniently, it gets you into every other school along the way. So like it really is. We'll get to the scalability. It's a good part of it. So that was 2022, and like after 2021, I knew I screwed up the supplements, and I spent a long time being like, well, what do these schools want? Like that was the big question. Is I know these schools want something, and well, this is like a dead strategy, but it was basically I was like, well, I was trying to reverse engineer fit. I was like, well, they want students to be like the students who go there was the idea. So I made students like Harvard, they were brave and they were like courageous. Or at Stanford, they were like MIT, they were brainiacs and whatever, and Stanford, Stanford, they fucking loved learning. It's the funny part. And shocker, if you go look at my results, 21, Stanford went better than the other top schools. But I knew, but A, that was too hard, and B, like it just didn't feel right because Harvard doesn't really have like a certain type of kid they want. The idea of institutional priorities or a fit or what have you, it just seemed kind of silly, especially at the top level.
Right.
So now I'm in the next year, and I meet a young lady who I didn't clarify use her name, but you didn't know her. Basically, her personality was that she fucking loved learning. She was also open-minded. She was also diligent. She was also perky. She was also excited. She was also curious. She was also quirky. She was cute. She was like in a fun way. She was also warm. Right? Like her natural disposition and her personality matched basically what I was looking for. And pretty much up to this point, and for like this was the last year I really had to do it. The way I was not an admissions officer, by the way. Like I mentioned it multiple times, and I used to be nervous or afraid to mention it. Like neither were you. Like don't worry, we're all friends. There was Charlene. And that was so I was like, how the hell do I learn this stuff? Because I was an impression that was pretty much correct that the really good consultants, they essentially like work there and they know all the inside secrets, and then they just do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm screwed. Well, I was like, no, I'm not screwed. I just have to kind of feed students into this black box and I have to reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
And that was really the process for my first 2.5, 3 years was trying a lot of different stuff. And I mentioned like offhand that that was a system that didn't work very well. There's another one is like I called it Augie Whiz versus Driven. It's like you either have to be like the perky. And Augie Whiz, you can kind of see how it like merge into what I'm doing now. Driven did not work. Like Driven. The idea was that like you were going to succeed. You have these goals. You're going to achieve them. It doesn't really matter where you go. However, if schools want to accept you, that'll be great. Like that didn't work either. So what I basically did was fed a lot of students into this machine, trying a lot of different things, my best effort, and tracked results, detailed heavily with tracking results. And what I looked for were outliers. So students that over or underperform their expectations based upon my belief of their overall application strength. And then this young lady in 2021, I gave a 3% chance to get into Yale, the one who was, because she was valedictorian, so like I think I underestimated that at the time. But like she was a very strong candidate, but not elite, and specifically not as elite as students the year before who I had failed to get into these top schools. Then I worked with her, and she does get into Yale, like just writing about how much she fucking loves learning, quite honestly. And then she also gets into MIT and Stanford and Harvard.
Wow.
And it was pretty obvious to me that I was onto something. Along the way that year, I'd also kind of realized like this was the best methodology. And my results that year I knew they were much better, especially at the top level. Like I cracked the code that way. So that leads into future years where like honestly the year after I just turned every student into her, and like I had a concussion at the time. I was kind of lazy. But that was the year you actually that's 2022, your first year, and then you were here last year and this year, and that's been the strategy since you arrived. And I'm not changing it because, well, it totally works, and we'll get to why it works now. I guess I have four sub reasons, like how you do FLL, what it really means. That's probably going to be like the topic of many other episodes coming up. Like this is more of the general idea,
right?
But here's 4 reasons like why FLL is so effective. When I say why, one is it is a skeleton key. Michelle, do you know what a skeleton key is?
I think so. That's a key that you can use it for like multiple different locks, right?
Yeah,
it's like a master key.
It's a magical mythical key that you get in the crab dungeon in most in Undisclosed Oblivion. That's where I know it from. And yes, it works in any lock. And so I talked briefly before about like a fail thing, like reverse engineering fit or institutional priorities. And a lot of students think about that. It's like, what do these schools want? Well, there's something I refer to as lanes. That's LANES. And a lane is all the different ways a student can and will get into college. for the majority of schools in the country, like having the lane of just having a GPA that's higher than their average is good enough. Like that is the easiest lane to get into the vast majority of schools.
Right.
However, we get into the tippy top tier as well as students who don't have above average GPA / test scores, and they need to find their own lane to get in. And you can sit at home, you can think of possible lanes. Like one of them is basically any strategy you are attempting, and you're attempting a strategy whether you know it or not. Like even no strategy is still a lane insofar as like I just wrote about my stuff, like that is still like an attempt, I guess. They still have anyone applying to college isn't implementing some sort of strategy. It might be terrible, but
Right.
like you're choosing to write something. You're
Still something.
yeah, in choosing to anything, you are inherently building a system one way or another. So yeah, there's like different lanes. Like one is, and there's a lot of lanes that do work. Like that's the key to this. Is like this is not the only way to get into college. Like I know that. However, do an application that shows how brave you are. I always use brave, like or emotions, or
Hmm.
how joyful you are, or how considerate you are. Any one adjective. Like I'm gonna theme my application around this. Well, okay, but like Harvard only has so much room for the bravest kids in the country.
True.
They probably have like one or two, and I say that like you can do that. You can be like brave applying to college, but you might have to be the bravest kid who applied that year in order to get into college. And
Right.
part of FL is we'll go back up to like perky, excited, curious, cute versus self-aggrandizing, critical, controversial, argumentative, arrogant. And I don't do a lot of negative things.
Right.
It's not as much as like everything's perfect. Like there can be problems in your application. You can be upset with things, but usually they shouldn't be related to yourself, quite honestly. And I don't do trauma dumping, like full stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen the work. Like okay, in very limited experience. There will be an episode on when it's okay to write about like hard shit, and spoilers like 3 things that I do,
Yeah.
and boy do I do them. I really do them. Um, but like that is a lane. Okay, so
That's true.
if you're overcoming adversity, that's what I keep referring to. That is a lane, and similarly, like okay, but Harvard cannot fill its entire class with students who overcame adversity. Like neither
Exactly.
can most schools, and we'll get to is like the students they do is like often like like those slots are filled by certain students who really overcame adversity in a way that's
Right.
pretty hard to match. It's just a losing effort. So then comes an FLL is a skeleton key insofar as every school in America, no matter who they are, what they prioritize, or whatever their crappy mission statement, they're all exactly the same. That's terrible advice. Don't read them. God, I was thinking about that in the shower today. They all have what they all have in common is there is a mighty fine lane for students who love learning, particularly related to the academic subject they want to major in, and that is an aspect of FLL usually as we focus on the major.
Yeah.
That is, it may not be the biggest lane at certain schools. However, it is probably the bit like it's a goddamn school. Like, what do you think they want? They want students who are academically focused and love learning. And
Exactly.
this is where I can sneak in the thing I stole from a guy that I kind of stole this idea from. Michelle, when a student applies to college, what are they applying to be? I have to say it because I say it to students and they go, ooh, that makes sense. What are they applying to be?
I mean, they're applying to be a student at the school, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you actually got it. When one or you student at home or child of student at home, when you apply to college, you are literally an application to be a student at that school. And well, what makes the best student?
Yeah.
That is the biggest lane. You're trying to be a student. And what students are is, well, they often tend to be like, if you're warm, considered open-minded, diligent, perky, excited, curious, cute, quirky, intelligent, logical. Like the cute and quirky ones are more me. Like honestly, like those are more optional. But like, yeah, intelligent, logical, curious, excited, perky, diligent, open-minded. Those are all things that a very good student would be. And certainly a student that's not going to cause any red flags.
True.
So, and speaking of red flags, Michelle, let me introduce the concept of landmines.
Oof.
So FLL is just as much a product of like what you should do as avoiding what you should not do. And I brought up briefly like hard issues or adversity. I believe mental health issues. That's another episode entirely. I'm not a fan of them. I just don't do them full
Yeah.
stop. The goal of this application is to get you into college. So like it's very like that's also part of this is like the strategy is somewhat cynical in that I joke that like I built the system by like checking data and finding that this is the most effective way. Like if it turned out that writing about how much you were a hot dog or how hard your life is, like it's got you into college, that would be the strategy. So like,
Yeah.
it's true. So I joke, it's like a pretty deeply cynical kind of like calculated methodology that involves writing about how you love using math to like play tiddlywinks with your grandmother. Like that is
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, like that dichotomy still kind of screws with me. But FLL is there's so many ways that a college application can go wrong, and I believe a lot of reasons my students do very well is because the writing is good and the applications and the admissions readers like them and all that stuff. However, so much of the work I do is helping my students avoid big time mistakes,
Yeah.
and that's often the thing I see when I see applications of students where it didn't work out. And probably the most like brutal part of this process is that if you make like a real bad mistake, and there are a lot of them, and maybe that's another thing we can go over, just like the landmines that are most common, that scales often. So if it's in your personal statement, if you write something whether you intend to or not that is like real bad, well, that goes to every single school. Or
Yeah.
like any big time mistakes or glaring issues that a guy like me like spots out, but like I see a lot of teenagers can just not notice. That goes to every single school, and it's possible you can get bounced from like every single school for like the same bad personal statement, for the same like really rough topic you went with. There's a lot of different options. FLL is cool because it really conveniently skips over a lot of that, like those potentially dangerous topics or those dangerous
Right.
situations. It's simply the idea that, well, you're just right about like how much you love learning and how you apply it. It seems like it can almost seem like overly simple, but like there's so many ways to go with it, and it avoids potentially danger. I've never seen an essay from a student that just writes about like how much they love learning one way or another that I'm like, let's shift back.
Yeah. It
It's much
sounds
more.
like relatively benign.
Yes, and that's kind of what these schools are looking for. Like they're trying to get
Exactly.
students.
Yep.
That kind of leads into my third one, where it's easier and more fun to do. Like this process is pretty brutal and difficult in the first place, and it can get a lot harder if you're writing about like all the crappy hard things that have happened in your life or what have you. Or trying to push the fact that you've lived such an amazing like incredible life. I think in the no list I put like self-aggrandizing,
Mm-hmm.
sensationalist. That probably one of the most biggest complaints I hear from students is like I'm boring, like I didn't live it, I didn't do anything incredible.
Right.
And that's like I work with some fabulous students. I would say that's I wouldn't call them boring, but I would say that's true. Like the majority of students have not done anything incredible. Like that's a high bar to pass for a teenager, for anybody. This but every single student can write about their interest in their academic subjects, why it matters to them, and how they've applied it.
Yes.
And I just know that it's so much easier for me to work this way because and similarly, whenever I go down the other path, or someone wants to write about a hard issue, like it's a harder essay to write. It's more stressful. It's more like there's more pressure on it, and like what I found over and over, it's not just that like the results from the colleges are not what I want them to be, but also it's just like whenever people read the portfolios we do or what have you, or like see the essays, they never bring that one up. They don't bury it or anything, but that's not the one they will like or want to sound like. Like it's just like it's
Right.
not like this is an application, and part of it is coming off as like the right kind of student, and I like this is bleeding into. That's why this system is so much more about like removal as it is addition. Like it is very important to me that like topics and the structure and like those there's some really bad ideas, and like I think probably this comes back to anything can work. Like I think about that line all the time because so much of my process is about being like, no, don't do any of these bad ideas. Like just stick to this good. And I guess the cool part is there's so much you can do with this. You've seen these students like it's not like this leads to boring repetitive essays. Like I have my certain topics I like to use over and over again. I like tutoring essays. I like anything where students like built something or like had like a wacky event.
Mm-hmm.
40 in a garage, I used to call it, like building some dumb thing. I like yeah, I like many such cases of essays I enjoy. And that's the key is like I'm able to implement these kind of well, you see how those all lead into like a genuine love of learning.
Yep.
I love tutoring essays. I love little kid essays, like teaching people things because they this work so well. And
Mm-hmm.
this process it is adaptable, and I guess if you student sitting at home, like I hope this is most if you're wondering like I'm not that impressive, I didn't overcome any adversity. I was like, cool, you don't have to. Like, do you love
Yep.
learning? What subject do you like? Cool. What are you gonna major in? Okay, cool. What have you done right about that and what it matters to you? And then what are you gonna want to do in college? It's like that. Like that is the path. It's very easy and accessible. And then D, it scales. So unlike my previous efforts, because every single school in the country, I do mean it like they're schools, bro. Like every single school in the country loves learning. It's going to be very quick and easy to then replicate all these essay content for different schools.
Right.
part of the system is I basically assume every school is exactly the same. That's not entirely true. However, uh, like I can count, like there might be like I can count on one hand like the schools I do things a little bit different. It's often more related to like what supplements they're asking. Like Rice wants you to be a little bit nicer. Like I don't know, like that's that simple. But that is the key to this, is that this is the reason I'm able to apply to 18, 20, 25 schools with students, because the general strategy is sound, and it scales not just in you can reuse content, but also that, especially now we're currently in supplement land here in early October, like filming this, and
Mhm.
it is so much easier to be like, what do I do? What do I do? How do I answer this? Like, what does it say about me and my love of learning?
Exactly.
And that is probably at its key. The two aspects: one is knowing what not to write about and avoiding all that crap, and two is always having in mind when in doubt. And this is really what I do when in doubt. It's like, how do you get some FLL in this shit? Like how do I?
Yeah, totally.
And bro, I want to help the Zoomers out there. It helps me so much. You aren't even there. There's so many, like, you can ask the students. It's like, does Mattie like openly just get like excited about how smart FLL is? He's like, yeah, he gets really, it's like, but also those essays are like pretty fire and take like 6 minutes to outline, don't they? Like, yeah, they do. They do. They do. So that is the grand strategy. And how do you implement it is like the next question. Well, that is going to be probably the tones over the next episode, because it is a complicated strategy. It's an overall mindset. Those two things, like knowing what to and not to use, as well as always having it in mind. However, like the strategy is a lot wider than that, and that is probably what we will be continuing on. I guess my guess is that the next episode of this related to FLL will be going to the UC essays, because what I want this
Hmm.
podcast to be is to slowly but surely go over my entire methodology, probably to the point where we can kind of exclude it. And the actual process, like there's a lot of micro to it. There are FLL paragraphs, which I'll get to. Like, although, oh man, that's some good stuff. That's not for episode 5. I gotta save the FLL paragraph. But the basic idea is that FLL, I have also joked that FLL is kind of like the word woke, that I use it for everything, but I don't know exactly what to call it. But like it's there's basically the FLL is also a general strategy for how to apply to college, and that starts with the UC essays. Basically, that would probably be the next step, because I think going through those like one by one, like going through actually the process that I go through, which is basically UCs, jump to the personal statement, jump to the supplement, top school supplement, crappy state schools that you also apply to, and then return to the UCs, and then everything else. Like that is the overall. I think going through that structure, like bang, 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 and I think that would probably be the easiest way to go more in depth on like how I actually implement this strategy on
Makes
different
sense.
topics. Michelle, any questions?
I mean, I guess my takeaway is FLL is like a strategy, but it's also a verb and it's also an adjective, and it can be very, very effective. But I'm also wondering, like, how do you kind of get students into the FLL mindset?
Yeah, so it's not a hard sell, and I guess maybe that could be a like an E thing, when it's like this isn't crazy talk, is I'm kind of like a wacky dude, and God, can I not make it more? I want. Don't you dare think I turn kids into hot dogs. Like I swear to God, like that. No, you at home, like you're like this guy's just. That's also F. Is it like it matches my interest in my writing style and my personality? Like that might be
Yeah.
like a limitation for you at home. However, this also scales in that I've had like boisterous kids, serious kids, quiet kids, loud kids, politically motivated kids. Like this scales to this is what I use for every gosh darn student. And like
Hmm.
in the last 3 or 4 years, they'll be like, yeah, totally, that's what he did. Whereas you're probably like, oh, that's what he was telling me he was willing towards. Like, which I say you get what you pay for is always my takeaway on the first couple of years of my career. Um, yeah, what was your original question?
Like you said, students are thinking, I have to talk about how I overcame diversity or I have to trauma dump. So you have to kind of get them
Overcome
to pivot.
adversity.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a hard sell usually. I guess it helps a little bit that like I am the man in the white coat kind of thing, or it's like, now we're doing this. They go, okay. But I've with every year there's one or two students that like actively want to write about like some. It's usually last year it was two students writing about like health, like the overcoming adversity.
Hmm.
And well, it's a combination of, it's usually not that hard. Like I just get them going, and it's kind of fun. Like I don't know if fun's yeah, like to write about the class you taught, or the adventure you had with this academic subject, or what have you. like I'm neither forcing them to write out something that is like really rough for them or doing it. And also, I still stand by I hope a big takeaway is like the strategy is not crazy. Like it's a pretty logical, and this is not just me, you know, like FLL is a wacky name. I put a little writer slant on it, but this is kind of the strategy you're going to get at like your top tier admissions fee. Like this is how you get into college. I used to call it a secret handshake
Hmm.
that you still got to have be interesting and be excellent and all those different things, but like this is the secret sauce. And I used to be more cynical about it, but if you get two students that are both equally excellent and they both write equally well, if one of them demonstrates a love of learning, intellectual vitality, you know, I mentioned it
Yeah.
in the quote, like that's what this actually is. And that's absolutely one of the top factors. You can go ahead and ask ChatGPT; it'll tell you so. Um, but I guess my overall strategy is emphasizing this aspect to its absolute limits and using it as overall mindset, as opposed to it being an important aspect that I think most students might accidentally kind of slip up and forget. So I think we can. Oh, you get time for one more question. Charlene said I could have 40 minutes. I get two ice cream cones today. But I guess before going into the actual strategy, my guess is that a follow up to this episode would be more in depth on what FLL actually means. You know, like
Hmm.
or the different aspects of how one actually implements it. And I'm not sure if that means like just starting with. I might just start with the UCs because the reality is what's about this podcast and my actual work is my actual work is I don't spend 25 minutes like breaking down all these different things. I kind of just get going with students. I tell them what to do and help them with it. And I think that might be the best instructive way for me to just go through and explain how to do, like, say, the UC application, which is what I would start with. And I recommend students that are hopefully not finding this right now when the UCs are due in like 3 weeks, probably, if you're when this goes up.
Yeah.
Um, no, I think that would probably be the next best step. Any last questions before we go, Michelle?
Have you ever had a student who just does not, who cannot FLL?
So that's the thing is that some students naturally glom onto this strategy better than others, and they are the
Hmm.
ones who tends to unironic like part of their personality or interest is that they effing love learning. Um, yeah, and those usually tend to be the easiest students for me to work with, I will say. And I'm not sure if they sometimes, although I get the impression they'd be easy to work with a lot of different people, or maybe
Hmm.
not, because that is definitely true. The students that have the FLL-ish thing is I guess this bleeds into kind of what like, there's three things I try to build up with students, and they're all in the words I want. One is FLL, the other is perky go getter, and the third is warm. And they're all in perky and warm are in there. But those are probably the three like food groups of personality types I'm looking for. And I tend to find that students almost like an RPG like skill chart. They tend to be strong in one, okay in the other, and a little bit below okay in the third. That's why I would put is like the average.
Okay.
And it's the easiest when like the best one is the is the FLL. But yeah, like perk them into it. I guess by the nature of them trying to apply to top schools and having a major and having usually having extracurriculars that back up what they do, we can make it work. It's sometimes
Yeah.
that's on my is like also part of FLL is it synergizes nicely and naturally with whatever you're doing. Like the basic strategy is apply a major that matches your extracurriculars and then write about them, explain what that means to you, and then use that information to then write and inform your white school content about what you want to do at that school.
Right.
It's easy as 312, and that's I stopped using it because it was too confusing to make a joke about. But I, I've never I cannot think of a clear student where I'm just like, dude, this kid like does not get it or what have you. It was like I would say that there are many students that like tolerate learn. Sometimes it means to an end, I guess, and
Yeah.
that's definitely the case for students who want your Harvard, Stanford, Yale's. Is like learning and like the passion of it is part of the job to have a 4.0 and a 1550 and like 9 APs and everything. Just getting to that point that you're playing at the top level, you whether you liked it or not or loved it or not, like you have absolutely learned a whole shitload and you're gonna go learn more. So I don't worry too much about it.
So, okay. So for a student now, because everyone's getting ready to apply to colleges and maybe they want to adopt this strategy, like what advice do you have for them to kind of implement this into their application?
For right now, yeah, I think this is what I finish with is if you are sitting there stuck, students, and this does apply a little bit for the personal statement, although as when we get to that, like it's more for the supplements and then the UCS. Although it also if you're sitting there, be like, what the fuck do I write? Like, what do I do? And especially if you are having pangs of doubt that you are not interesting enough, or you have not, or you're not a victim, or like you're just a boring teenage kid, right? If you will. Well, it takes time to be like, well, what major am I applying? Okay. What have I done related to that is interesting? Like it's also this is not fucking love school. It's also something I want to add that like this is not this is not just like a general enthusiasm for like being in school. It's general enthusiasm for the academic subject, and that can include you being in class. But generally, I don't talk about class that often, or it's like I learned this in class and I went and did an adventure with it. Think about it that way. Is like think about your academic passions and what like a great like the what brings you joy answer that like Brown has and MIT has is a great one to go try it out on. It's like what brings you joy? Learning, mother. How does that like what what about your academic subject do you really enjoy? Like, what do you enjoy doing with it? And if that's a little bit weird, like the way you implement it, even better. So, and if you can make that connection, like, how do you apply your academics? I also do essays about puzzles. You know, I like math puzzle essays. I like, there's what is like, I really should have like on the TikTok on the shorts, I'll find some essays. That's what I'll do is like here are 5 FLL essays that my students killed it with, and then like that's basically the ideas. I think that's what I can do. Follow this up is just the general topic ideas of like how FLL really works, because it really like the most one example is a girl. She learned about a political concept about how like the way you dress and the way you interact with others, like in a diplomatic function, affects how negotiations go down. She then implemented those strategies into her debate, demeanor, and like let's start using and like start dressing and kind of like walking in a different way. And I think that essay ends with like, did it work? Like I have no idea, but it still was fun. And like that's the energy. That's the energy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that you were not like saving the world. I think that's enough FLL for now. My guess is that next time we'll jump into the UCs and I'll have a whole thing of that, and I will make an emphasis to go over like where the FLL stuff is coming in, and and that's when hopefully we'll have some example essays. I think that would help as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And this one in particular, if you at home like the podcast is here, I hope you liked it. You were asking me 4 years ago, and I made it. If you like this one, this is the one I'd like you to share around because, or share with other people, because this is absolutely the episode where I like, this is some A+ prime stuff you have gotten here. Like this is my overall strategy. And I think a lot of the other episodes that are coming up won't make as much sense without having heard it. So if you have other people who are in this process, this is the one I recommend you check out, have them check out. Cause I also like this one to do well because like, I don't know, man, I give you like the best stuff. Like you can give me a view. Like, okay. Thank you, Michelle. I'll see you next week. All right.
See you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching College with Mattie. For more information or a coaching session with Mattie, visit collegewithmattie.com. You can follow College with Mattie on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Tune in next week for more episodes, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.